All right, so we're moving on to the list under candidates. And the first one on there is requiring a potential candidate to have voted in all elections for which they're eligible. I'm going to not go there today because I want Ella Spotswood from the AG's office could not join us today, and she's the campaign finance guru over there, but they couldn't join us today. So we're going to put that.
Yeah, if I may, Madam Chair, when they come, and I could email Ella directly if it's helpful. One of the things I wanted to know from them is kind of the pros and cons of waiting until this goes to court.
I think we should have that discussion.
Yeah.
In committee.
Her. Right. Yeah. No, I just meant queuing her up to be prepared to have that conversation. Like, are there pros and cons to let it happen in court instead of in the
I've already done that.
Okay. Yeah, I think our chair's done.
Okay.
That's the tee up.
Great.
Yeah. I mean, I have contacted her and told her what the issue is and why we are taking it up. Okay, so the next then is the deadlines for independent and minor party candidates. So Will, do you want to tell us where that is right now?
Sure. I'm not sure where this came from, Senator White, although I think you said it came from our office.
You know, I don't know, but it's a question that's on here, and so we should address it.
Yeah. I want to check with Secretary Condos about this issue because I know he's mentioned it, but I'm not entirely clear what his concern with the deadlines is right now. From an administrative perspective on my end, I think they're okay. It's set up right now that we get those, so independent and minor party candidates, which that you just asked about, only run in the general election. So you populate the general election ballot through minor party nominations, independent candidate petition filings, and then winners of the major party primaries. Those three things all come together to get your list of candidates for the general election. And right now we get the independent candidates the Friday before the primary. And you all have had significant debate about that in the past, about whether they could be allowed to file after the primary or not. That's the sore loser debate. Right now, that's not an option because they have to decide and file as an independent before they know whether or not they won the primary. Although you can still do that, and then you withdraw your independent candidate nomination if you win your primary, or keep your independent candidate nomination if you lose your primary. Right now, though, those are due the Friday before. And so we've got those in-house. Then you get the primary winners on the Tuesday of the primary. And then the Friday after the primary is when the minor party nominations are due. So from my perspective of ballot creation, that's really helpful because we have all the information we need for the ballot by the Friday after the primary. That's also when your choice of parties are due. So if you get nominated by more than one of those means, you tell my office by that Friday which nominations you accept and in what order you want them to appear on the general ballot.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up to questions and comments, but first I'm going to tell you where I stand on this. And I know this is a losing battle. I do not think independents should have to declare their candidacy until after the primary. And it isn't just the sore loser issue. Somebody may decide after the primary that they don't like any of the three-party candidates. They don't think that they are going to represent the district or at all, and so they decide to run. They have no ability to do that. So I know that, as Senator Collmore said, it's an uphill battle on the issue that he brought up. I know this is an uphill battle for me here, but I honestly don't think they should be declaring their candidacy before the primary is over. So anybody want to weigh in on this or where we are?
Well,
Senator Clarkson?
I'll just jump in, and because given this been that kind of a day, I would actually support the position we came to agreement on, except for you, 2 years ago. I think it's important for independents to declare, and I think it's important for them to, again, own their candidacy before the primary.
Anybody else? Senator Polina?
I guess I would, I guess I would ask what the downside is of letting people announce after the primary.
I don't know.
I know you don't have a good answer to that tonight, I understand, but
Does somebody have a good reason for not allowing them to declare after the primary? If the parties themselves can, if the Democrats don't run somebody in the primary, they have until, I believe, the Friday after to nominate somebody. So if they can nominate somebody a week after the election, why couldn't the independents also nominate themselves?
Can I just clarify? Are we,
Mhm.
if you ran in the primary and you lost, are you still allowed to run as an independent in the?
Correct. That's
You currently
No,
you
no.
would have to declare your independent petition the Friday before, so you wouldn't know if you've lost or not. The
Okay.
but and the way I see this is, if you lose, you should be able to declare as an independent. But it isn't just if you lose. Somebody may not have run in a primary at all, and then
Right,
they just But so you are allowed to, but only if you declare your independent candidacy the Friday before the election.
right.
So what does somebody want to answer Senator Polina's question about what is the downside to allowing independents as opposed to party people and minor party people to run afterwards? Allison?
Well, I mean, first of all, they in the primary have, in this situation, have asked to be considered in a party and have used the party's primary slot, or that spot as a way to run. And then if they lose that, it does, that they've lost it. So I don't think they should get a second bite at the apple. I don't think that's fair. And I think if the party has an open slot a week later and wants to nominate somebody, and that, it would be obviously a little different, but I think that is absolutely fair. The party has vetted them. There's a body who have vetted a candidate. I think letting people run who've lost, but it's like using I can't get over feeling like it's using a system and then disregarding it altogether.
How about if the person didn't run in the primary, but after the primary was over, they said, I don't like the Republican, I don't like the Democrat, and I don't like the Progressive, because none of them represent my community.
Well, then they can do a write-in candidacy. We've just allowed that.
But they can't declare their candidacy on the,
Could
they
someone
can't,
help me? So the
Yeah.
change is that right now they have to announce before the primary, the Friday before the Tuesday primary,
yes.
that they intend to run as an independent after the primary, regardless of the outcome. They
They
can't
have
do that. They wouldn't be able to then take the I if they had won a
No,
primary.
they could take either one at that point. I mean, if they won the primary for the Democrats, but then they also filed as an I before, they could choose either one to run on the general ballot, right? Is that right, Will?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that, Senator White?
they
I
could,
was looking at the statute to make sure I've got this stuff right and I need to correct myself on something, but
if they win the Democratic primary and also file as an independent because they were afraid they might lose that, they then can either say, I've decided I'm going to run as independent or as a Democrat. They can choose either one at that point.
correct, but not both.
Right.
Right, but then could the Democrats not then fill in, because then they would have an open hole with no candidate. They could then fill in that open slot
Right.
by
Yes,
nominating somebody, right?
So if somebody can clarify for me why it's okay for the parties to be able to have a week after the primary to nominate somebody, but an independent can't nominate themselves after the primary. That's the question that I have.
Well,
Yeah.
It's nobody. Yes, we'll go for it.
well, I need to correct myself from previous. This is a real test, by the way, to be jumping through these election issues one by one and having the law at the top of my head, but I appreciate it.
I know.
The minor party committee nominations are due prior to the primary. Minor parties need to file on the Thursday before.
Oh, I thought they were the Friday after.
I'm sorry, that deadline that I was thinking about is for the major parties
Right.
that fail to nominate via the primary. And they actually have 6 days after the primary to do that. And the reason for that 6 days is so that there's a 5-day notice on committee meetings. So they can put out their 5-day notice and on the 6th day nominate for any offices that they failed to elect through the primary.
And
Then what Senator Clarkson was referring to too, candidates can withdraw, right, at any time up to the printing of the ballot really is the language in the statute. And then I would have to look back, but it's either 7 or 10 days, Bruce may know, that the party has to nominate somebody to fill in any withdrawal or death of a candidate.
Bruce, do you know?
I think it's 10.
Bruce Olson, Vermont Democratic Party. I do not know the exact number offhand. I would have to look it up as well,
I can get it
what the
too.
time frame is.
Madam Chair, can I ask some other?
Sure.
So the current parties that have major party status in Vermont are Ds, Rs, and Ps. Is that right?
Yes.
And Is can never be a major party because they're not a declared party. Being an
Well, you
I-
can't, you wouldn't have a party if you're an independent.
Okay. So then what Is have is the same as what minor party candidates have? Or minor party candidates also get something different consideration wise?
Minor parties do it on Thursday before the election, before the primary. Independents do it on Friday before the primary, and major parties do it the week after.
So it's kind of a benefit of being a major party, which is a sought after designation and was when there were, when a minor party wants to go to a major party, that's a benefit you have of being a major party.
Yes.
So if there isn't support here, I'm not going to pursue this just as the others. I know that this is, and I actually, one of my worst experiences on the floor was when we actually came to this compromise, because it used to be that independents declared after the primary. Then it was moved so that they had to declare at the same time the major party candidates declared.
That's right.
And we took a lot of testimony on that, and I firmly believe that's unconstitutional because they're not running in the primary. So the compromise was to the Friday before, and I dreamt that I reported it on the floor and was so upset about the compromise that then I went in the cloakroom and threw up.
Jeez.
No.
Charming. I don't think I can ever go through the cloakroom again.
But anyway, so if unless others want to pursue this, I'm just going to drop it because I don't think there's any support for it, even though I firmly believe I'm right. So
Well, that's what we
We'll
love
never-
about you. That's what we love about you, Jeanette White. You always firmly believe you're right. And then
No.
every once in a while, though, you do the big switcheroony. And we live for those moments. Brian and I live for those moments.
I do think I'm right here, but I'm not going to pursue it if there's not the will to do it, because I don't think it would make it through the House anyway.
I mean, I'm just going to ask clarifying, AKA dumb questions until I understand things. So you might have been able to convince me. I just am learning as I go about some of these really nuanced positions and when they've changed and, who's affected, right? I think there's partially clerks are affected, but in many ways it's candidates and why they would choose to run. And I don't have enough background in how this has tripped people up recently.
I think the impetus for changing it was that it's the sore loser issue, and people really felt strongly. And there were a few in the House that year that were sore losers and ran as independents. And I don't think that's a valid concern, but obviously a lot of people do. So Senator Collmore?
Yeah, I guess I'm okay with what we have now.
Okay.
I understand Senator Clarkson's point about using resources of the major parties, but I also understand your position too, but I don't think I feel it strongly enough to change what's current.
As Carol said, I'm not going to fall on the sword for this one.
You did say that.
Senator Polina?
I would leave it the way it is. I mean, I've mixed feelings about it, but I also have had the experience where I've been asked to endorse people who you would characterize as sore losers, people who lost the primary but said they wanted to keep running anyway. And would I support them, personally? And I've said no, because I'm not a big fan of the sore loser aspect of things. But on the other hand, I think announcing an independent after the primary would be okay. So I'm really of mixed feelings about it.
I think we'll drop it.
Yep.
Okay. So the next one is the ability to only run on one party in the general election. Not be able to run as a DP or an RD or a DR.
Well, that's kind of silly.
Well, it was a suggestion that came up, so it's here.
No, I know, I'm kidding.
Anybody have any feelings about that?
I mean, I don't even think it made our list, but I honestly care more when people run for like multiple positions than I do that they run under different parties.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
true.
Well, let's just, unless there's willingness to go ahead. I put everything on the list, I'm telling you, that, and this came from somebody, so I put it on the list. Senator Clarkson, do you have your hand up?
I do.
Okay.
So this is slightly different from the issue, the primary issue. We're going to talk about candidates running in the primary and then
Yes.
switching parties. You have that listed under primaries.
I have that listed next.
Okay. Because I do care about
But let's either do away with this or have more conversation first on running in only one party. Do away with it? With the suggestion?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So then the next one was the ability to run that if you choose to run as your primary party as a D in the primary, then you shouldn't be able to switch and run as your primary party as an R in the general, even though you got both nominations. And I suspect this is more an issue for R's and D's, but for D's and P's. So Bruce, you had that on your list also, I remember. Do you want to?
Yes, well, thank you, Madam Chair. For the Vermont Democratic Party, we think this is an important issue. Just as I think I indicated last week, it goes to like truth in advertising. You know, what is the person standing for? And ultimately, we were asking the question, is there a difference between the parties? And if there is some type of difference between the parties, and if somebody runs in Party A, then and they win the primary in Party A's primary, then they should run in that same party in the general election. Now, if they want to be an A/B/C, we don't have a problem with that. That's fine. They can have multiple party endorsements, but their principal party should be consistent between the primary and the general election. We've had a lot of complaints about people switching. You know, I thought I voted for instance, I thought I voted for a Democrat, and now now it looks like that person is running on a different party. So we just want to maintain that consistency, the truth in advertising, and you know, an indication that the parties actually stand for something different. Particularly, you know, if they're a major party, you know, people should be recognizing that and running in the principles of that party.
So I'm going to ask Will, before we have more conversation on that, I'm going to ask Will, after the election, after the primary, then the candidate gets their nominating papers or whatever those are called, whatever, and then they choose which party they want first. Isn't that the way the statute reads? They choose. And if they don't choose, then you choose for them. And you do it alphabetically or some.
No, we don't choose. That's also laid out in the statute.
Okay.
If they don't tell us, it goes the way you would probably expect, which is the one you were nominated for by primary, then any committee nomination.
Okay. But
I think we actually said just the example you gave too, it would be any where you were the named candidate and nominated by that party primary. Then if you got written in on another major party, that would be second. And then any committee nomination would be third.
But you can't be written on two primary ballots?
No.
Okay, I just need to remind myself of that. Okay.
Yep.
You can't run in two primaries,
Right.
yeah.
I would just note though too, we talked a lot about deadlines, but the major party nominations, I would have to look back, but there's a wide range. So like most of the party nominations that we get from major parties come in during the summer sometime. So they'll be running in the party primary of one party, and then we get a party nomination from another party for that same person that sits on file in our office until the time they have to, after the primary, tell us what order they want those to go in.
I just think that if a person is endorsed by, wins the support of two parties, that means that both of those parties were supporting that person, knowing that the person had the option of how they declare themselves, how they name themselves. And I think it should be up to the candidates to decide. They got support from both. Both parties trusted this person enough to support them, whether it's winning a primary or winning a nomination, whatever it might be. I don't see why we wouldn't let the person decide for themselves how they wanted to be listed. And I think, the reality is that, these days, where things are at, by running in the Democratic primary, for example, you get to actually spread your message to more people and get seen by more people, which then gives more people the opportunity to decide if they support you or not. So I think that it's, there wouldn't be as much competition in a progressive primary. So it actually is more beneficial to the process to allow people to run and to get the support of both parties and then make a decision for themselves as to which order they want them to be in. And frankly, I don't think for the voters, I could be wrong, but I don't think voters really care that much, to tell you the truth. Party people care about this stuff, but I've run under both parties, and I don't think I've ever had anybody question me or ask me about why I did one or the other, or I don't think anybody ever decided based on that, the order of the parties. I think voters vote for a person, and they don't really look at whether it's got a D or a P or an R. They vote for who they support.
Senator Clarkson?
I don't agree with Anthony. I think parties put a lot of resources into their primary candidates. and they open up, primary candidates get access to stuff that they wouldn't get if they were necessarily in another party. And to not have to, if you win that primary, to not have to take that win, and use it as the first letter of what you run as, is really, to me, you have been untruthful to the voters. I mean, when you go back to the voters, you've said, I care enough to run in the Democratic primary. I care enough to be a candidate in the Democratic primary. And that's where your name is printed. And that's, you own that candidacy. To then turn around after the primary and say, well, really, I want to be a PD. You know, that's not what the voters voted for. I mean, you may have been written in something else, but you ran with an intentionality of being a Democrat. And I think you need to own that. And I think that that needs to be consistent with whatever letters you add after that. Fine to add a P afterwards, but the primary you win should be the primary that you are represented, that should be first represented in the letters that follow your name. I think, too many resources and too much energy, too much is shared with, it's unfair. It just strikes me as unfair, and that the party system is being used, and people do care, actually, Anthony. We've had close by, we had a race with somebody who switched, and it just didn't feel good. And I've had a bunch of voters ask me, what's the difference, why? What was she, had something happened that made her unhappy with us? What had we done?
Senator Rahm?
I have a clarifying question, which is there a way for somebody to use the platform and resources of a party and then help advance the major party status of another party through that win? So I guess I'm curious, like, if everybody's running as a Democrat, how do the progressives maintain the major party status in that regard? Is it from the general election, not from the primary? I'm just trying to rank
well,
here.
we do have a list on here, and I think that to be a major party, you have to be organized in 30 towns, and you have to in 7 counties or more. And
also, like, how many votes you got.
Well, I tried to
Percentage of
find that
votes.
in here, and I couldn't find it.
I thought it was based also on percentage of votes.
I did too. Will?
Just looking at that to make sure I get this right, and it's a good point to raise, Senator Rahm. One of the requirements to be a major party is to have received 5% or more of the vote with a candidate for statewide office. So you need a statewide office candidate on the general election ballot that receives 5% or more of the vote. There's also a provision, that's what I was just looking at, that says that if you have a dual nomination, you have to tell our office which of those 2 parties you want the major part of the vote to go toward.
Mm-hmm.
And that needs to be the first one listed.
In the general election.
Correct. So just for an example, right, this year, Lieutenant Governor Zuckerman ran in the Democratic Party primary, got nominated by the Progressive Party State Committee, informed us that he wanted his parties to appear as PD on the general election ballot, and so the 5% would go to the P major party.
Right. So that's what feels like gaming a little bit to me, is that you would run in one primary, take advantage of that platform, which, Anthony, like you said, is valuable to get your message out there. But then you're springboarding your ultimate benefit to the party that you did not run on with the primary and helping their major party status, which does seem to present a challenge to me.
So an option, that's correct. An option, I am totally agnostic about this, would be a requirement that the party in which you ran as the primary candidate, right? So if you ran in the primary for the Democratic Party, that has to be listed first.
Right.
And that's the one that your vote totals for statewide office will go toward the major party consideration for.
Right.
I mean, I'm a little more agnostic about which one you put first. And maybe it has to be this way. But that's not my concern. If someone wants to say P first, that's fine. But if they're running in the Democratic primary, that I believe is the party that should benefit from their general election major party sort of vote count.
That would be an option.
When they
That
wanna
would be an option too. You're right. Regardless of the way you order them, we're going to look at the party in which you ran in the primary for that
Right.
calculation.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure I understand what you said there. You're saying, or somebody, Will or Keisha said that you could you could decide which order you want the letters to go in.
Yes.
But the 5% rule would relate to the
Yes.
one that you were in the primary on.
Right. I think with the letters, you're saying this is who I plan to caucus with. So you're giving the voter information about where you plan to put your allegiances once you get there. But you should not be able to advance the major party status of the party for which you did not run in their primary.
Right. Which is, I said less articulately than you, but which is why I feel that if you run in one party's primary, you should be obligated to run with that party first in your letter designation going forward in the general election.
I guess I'm personally, Allison, we may slightly disagree, but I'm less concerned that I want to give the candidate agency, but I don't think the party should benefit that didn't give them the platform in the primary.
That's my same point.
Oh, okay.
No,
Okay.
well,
go ahead.
I think Keisha is saying that you can choose whichever one you want first, but you shouldn't, the party should not receive major party status based on your running in a different party. If you run as a Democrat and you get more than 5% of the vote, the statewide vote, and then you decide that you're going to become a PD instead of a DP, then right now, your vote total, your percentage of the vote is given to the Progressive Party. And that maintains them as a major party. And Keisha's point is that regardless of how you put your letters, that you shouldn't profit the party that... Yeah.
Right. I understand. You end up in the same place. I mean, we may have different reasons. I mean, I support that,
but you don't end up in the same place,
which is
no.
If you shouldn't be allowed to take advantage. You should the party that you ran on in the primary should benefit with those vote totals in the general election.
Yes, regardless of how
you order it. I could care less about the order.
Regardless.
Yeah, but the order has impact on the
vote. Doesn't have to.
It's up to you.
We can change that. It doesn't have to be the order that assigns the percentage of the votes. That's what Keisha's saying. And
right, and Keisha's saying that, but so that no matter which order it was put in, that the whoever you ran in the primary would get the benefit of the tally, the benefit of the vote. I get that, and I guess I would say that I think that I would go one step further and say that if you have benefited that fully from a primary with a party, you should have that party be first in your letter accumulations in all your degrees that you list after your name.
Bruce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to kind of indicate that we heard from a lot of voters in the last election that they do care about what the primary party affiliation is. To say that they don't care, I think is not accurate. I mean, it may not be with every voter, but we heard from a lot of voters that they were upset about that somebody could change their party affiliation, primary party affiliation between the primary and the general election. And they just did not feel that was fair. And, it's something disingenuous. Again, do the parties mean anything? That's what we're really getting to. If the parties mean something, then you should be consistent in your party affiliation from the primary through the general election.
Agreed.
Anybody else want to weigh in on this one? Senator Collmore?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm glad I had a chance to listen to all the discussion, because this was a really good discussion. It's kind of like in my mind, everybody's right. So I understand what Senator Polina said, and I agree with him. And I go back to John Odom's thing about when I go into a booth to vote, I'll make this distinction. I think it's different for a statewide candidate versus a local candidate. I think there's much more of a tendency on the local level for someone to vote for someone they know and not be as concerned about their party affiliation. I don't think that's as true in a statewide race as it might be on a local level. But, you know, Board of Aldermen, a mayor, even our elections to the General Assembly, depending on the size that you're talking about, a very small House district, for instance, I think people know who you are, and I don't think it reaches the same level of importance what party you belong to. So I take Anthony's point about people vote for the name. The name recognition is what we all began with. But I also feel strongly that Senator Clarkson and Rahm are making good points, and Bruce as well, that if you've chosen to run as a whatever and you won, I think you do have a responsibility to stay that way for the general election. So there you go.
All right, so where are we here now? We have 2 suggestions, I believe, or we have 3. Leave it the way it is. Change so that if you, whichever party in which you ran in the primary, and if you win, and even if you get write-ins or nominations from another party, you have to use that one as your first identifying letter. And then the third option is let the candidate choose which they want to put behind their name in which order. And but make sure that the votes that are cast are assigned to the party in which they ran in the primary. So it seems to me those are kind of the 3 options that we have. And where do anybody else out there have any feelings on this? John, Carol, Pat, Audrey, who else is with us? Oh, I see Chris Winters is with us. And John?
Well, since you asked, it's not
I
really
did
a
ask.
clerk thing. But as someone who before my clerk life was a multi-time Democratic county clerk, Democratic staffer, and there was a conversation about the resources, and Senator White, I think I was the one who provided you with your lists when you first ran.
Thank you.
A crazy program I wrote that, anyways. I think there's a couple arguments here. The one about where the 5% goes to is really administrative, and it's just sort of a practical conversation. The PRD thing, and Senator Polina will probably get a kick out of this because when I was a blogger, I was ruthless bugging him about running as a D and getting a D on there. But quite honestly, in my experience, that's not an administrative question, and it has always been a question about members of different parties feeling that it's icky. And I don't think ickiness is a really, I mean, I think I agree with Senator Rahm and Senator Polina. I don't know that intra-party icky feelings are probably a good basis on which to change something. So that would be my feeling.
Is that a technical election term?
Icky? It's a technical everything term.
Okay.
I don't know how much longer we want to talk about this, but I mean, obviously I appreciate John's thoughts. I don't like the idea that people are saying that you're benefiting the party by running in their primary, therefore you owe them something necessarily. I don't think that's quite accurate. I think I would look at it as somebody who's appealing to two parties and gets the support of both of those parties, that because those voters trust that person. And I think those voters trust that person enough that they would allow that person to make a decision as to whether they want to, to go out as a PD or a DP or whichever it is, regardless of where the percentages fall. I think that it goes back to the question of letting the voters really having the votes and the voters really have meaning. And they're voting for a person, they're not voting for a party. A lot of people will say, well, traditionally, my father, my grandfather, we all voted for Republicans, whatever, so I just vote for party line. But I think in Vermont, people vote for the person more than they're voting for the party. And I think if someone gets endorsed by two parties, those people are trusting that person to make a decision as to how they want to appear on the general election ballot and where they want their vote totals to go. I think I'm sorry. No, I'm done. I may end up going the Collmore method on this one. I don't know.
I'm going to throw in a thought here that I think you're right in local elections and in House elections and probably even in Senate elections. In statewide elections, I'm not so sure that most people had any idea who Beth Pierce was or Carolyn Brannigan.
Right.
I don't think people at the statewide level know who those people are. Who knows who Doug Hoffer is? I mean, but anyway, so I'm going to ask for some opinion here on should we leave it alone?
Yes.
Yes. If you're asking for a vote.
I'm just asking to get a sense of where we are. Should we leave it alone? Then there are two other options. So Senator Rahm?
I'm kind of attached to my administrative change because it doesn't feel very major party to use another major party's primary and then switch your party affiliation in the general.
So you're talking about the percentage of the votes?
Yes, as John called it, administrative. I'm happy to call it.
Senator Clarkson, do you want to leave it alone?
I've been pretty clear. I actually feel pretty strongly about this. I think that if you run.
No, just tell me if you want to leave it alone or not. That's all we're doing right now.
I do not want to leave it alone.
Okay, great. And neither do I. So we have three people who don't want to leave it alone. Now, the next question then is let's look at the question of the administrative issue and how that does, in my mind, make a huge difference that you shouldn't run in the Republican, and I'm going to use Republicans here because we use DPs all the time, and that's the case here, but you shouldn't run in the Republican primary, get 80% of the vote or whatever, and then decide that you're going to really be a Tea Party person and assign those votes to that party in order to make them qualify as a major party. That, in my mind, is totally wrong. So where are we with that? Because they don't necessarily go together, the order or this. So where are we with that? Senator Polina?
I don't like it.
You don't like what?
What you outlined.
You mean that you can use your votes to the benefit of the other party to qualify them as a major party?
Wait, I'm not sure. Ask the question again. I'm confused by the question.
So here's
I know the two things we're talking about. I'm just not sure which one we're talking about right now.
What we're talking about right now is, should people be allowed to run in the Democratic primary, right, and then decide that they want, I'll use Democrats and progressives because those are the parties that we have, run in the Democratic Party, get over 5% of the vote, then switch in the general election to the Progressive Party and use that percentage of the votes that they got in the Democratic race to qualify the Progressive Party to be a major party.
Well, they would have been endorsed by both parties and chose to put the Progressive Party back, put the P first and the D second.
Right.
That's
That's a different question of
Yeah,
which
we
they
already
put
lost
first or
that one,
second.
Anthony.
What?
We already lost that one, Anthony.
well, I'm really not sure which
No, I'm
one.
not sure
I'm
you
not-
did.
Okay.
Will, can you?
The way
will
it is-
you
the way
just
it is
explain
today-
this? Will you ask the question, Will?
Ask the question.
Yeah, I want to see where the 5 committee members are on this issue of being able to assign your vote percentages to the party in which you did not run in the primary.
You can do that right now.
I know,
Right.
and so would you explain that so that that all 5 of us understand that and we can get a read on it?
Well, so somebody can run in the Democratic primary for a statewide office, win that primary, also be nominated by another political party, including a minor party.
Mhm.
We could have a few of in Vermont on and off. Libertarians almost always organize, and Liberty Union.
Mhm.
Here's. So sorry to throw that curveball, but by any organized party, which includes minor parties, can then also nominate you just through the party committee process, right? And say, we want you to be our gubernatorial candidate on the general election ballot. Then it's up to that candidate under current law to decide both things, the order of the names and which of those parties that are going to appear on the general election ballot will benefit from. So which one we look at when we say, did the party that nominated him by committee have a candidate that got 5% in the general election? They tell us which party to apply that 5% to and to determine the major party status of that party going forward. What's interesting is the current law sets it up kind of the opposite of what you guys are talking about, where it says, you tell us which party to apply that 5% to, and that party has to be listed first. That's how the current law is written. So it's saying what Senator Clarkson kind of wants to be the case also, that, but it allows them, the difference from Senator Clarkson is it allows them to choose that one, but then it says you have to list that first, but you could choose the one that's not the primary winner. You guys are talking about whether we want to say the 5% has to be applied to the party of which you win the primary.
Yes,
And
that's
then
the question.
Separate question, do we care whether you then list that first, second,
Right.
third?
And I want to separate the
And-
listing.
And the other thing, right, and the other thing I want to say, I don't agree that that's an administrative decision. That's a really sort of fundamental decision to the viability of major parties going forward. That's an easy administrative thing for us to do. You just tell us which party to choose to look at, you know.
Right.
And on that note, I just want the committee to remember that what major party status means is that we, the state, have to run a primary
Yeah.
for the party. And that means we have to produce the same amount of ballots for that party as we do for any other major party. Because we have to be ready to send all 3 in the current case ballots to every voter who requests them. You always need to assume that everybody might request any ballot. So it's a pretty large expense for the state in ballot printing costs to operate these primaries. And
So
it
we
will
could-
be more so if we're talking about a lot of mailing of ballots back and forth.
We could actually, we could end up with a number of major parties if people can assign the vote counts to any party they want. I mean, where they were nominated. If they were nominated by Liberty Union Party, they could assign the vote. At one point, wasn't the Liberty Union Party a major party?
I believe
think so.
before my time, maybe for a cycle.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were for a little bit.
yeah.
I mean,
Okay, so where are we with,
most democracies would appreciate having multiple parties.
I
Well,
seem to remember one of our statewide officers once ran with, this is a slightly different question, but ran with 6 party names behind his name on the ballot.
That's right.
And I won't say who it was, but so where are we with this question of assigning the vote counts? Does any, before I go to the committees, the committee for weigh-in, does anybody else out there have any feeling about this? Gwen, Pat, Carol, Audrey, Chris Winters? No, I guess not. I didn't see any hands or any unmutes. So, okay, so where are we with that? Senator Clarkson, this is not how you put the order in which you put it behind your name. We're going to ask that question
I
later.
am clear on that. We're voting on the 5% rule.
Yep.
And I think that if that the 5% should follow the primary win.
Okay. Senator Rahm,
I agree with that.
Senator Collimore,
I agree.
Senator Polina.
Wait a second.
Did we just lose?
My battery just went dead. I just plugged in.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
yes.
I can't see anything. I mean,
We
on
can't
the
see you
screen.
either.
we
Wait a
can't
minute.
see you, but we can hear you.
All right, there I
Now
am.
we
I'm
can-
back. Sorry,
now we
my
can-
battery went dead. I'm not going to ask you to state the question again. I think that it's up to the candidate to decide where they want the 5% the percent to go. I don't know
Okay,
if
so
that's shorthand way of saying it.
that is your answer. Yes, I agree with. I think that it should go with the party in which they ran in the primary. So we have 4 here. So we can get that written up. Now let's talk about the order of behind their name. Senator Clarkson.
Well, everybody knows how I feel.
Yep. Okay. Senator
I
Rahm.
feel that, just like the 5%, first place should go first position. I don't know how we want to refer to it, but
Yep.
if you win in a primary, you have to translate that win not only to the 5%, the 5% follows the primary win, so should the placement of the party letter.
Okay. Senator Collimore.
Oh, boy. I thought we were all done with this.
I know. I'm sorry.
Well,
I-
he's thinking, can I ask a clarify? Oh, sorry. I thought you were
No,
thinking.
it's getting clearer.
Okay. Yes.
Okay,
Clarifying
Allison.
question.
Allison has convinced me. I will agree with her on this.
Do you have to keep the party even if it's not first?
No,
I mean, okay, so let's say the Republicans, wrote you in, but you just don't want that label.
Right.
You don't have to keep it.
no.
No, I have been written in 2 or 3 times, Republicans down here, because we don't have a lot of Republicans down here. And so they've written me in, and I did not accept the nomination just because I felt it's a difference in basic platforms in the parties. So I couldn't run as both, but you don't have to accept it. Yes.
I see this as an issue more of a candidate's. I mean, it's such an intimate decision on how you want to put yourself out there and what values that, sort of shares about who you are and who you're going to caucus with. So I think of this as very separate, and I would want to continue to allow candidates to put the party affiliations in whatever order they choose.
Senator Polina.
I would agree with Keisha, what she just said. I think it's up to the candidates to decide what order they want to put the party names on. I think we're basically changing something, or we're fixing something that isn't broken. I think just, the ideal thing would be to leave it alone, but obviously that's not happening.
Okay, so my vote is, I think there are many, many people in the state who think it's broken. There are many people who don't think it's broken, but I don't think that voters have any idea when they vote for somebody that the candidate can then choose whether they put the P or the D or the R or the D first. I think voters don't know that. They just vote for a candidate. So I am going to vote with Collmore and Clarkson here. Okay. It is,
It's almost 4:30.
yeah, there's one more issue that I'd like to I think we can get rid of it on our list right within 3 minutes. There was a suggestion that there ought to be a penalty for candidates who open the ballot box early. And I looked up the penalties, and I believe there is a $200 fine. So I'm not sure why this was an issue. Does anybody wish to speak to this?
Well, I think it happened, if I'm remembering the incident in Rutland County. But I don't really have anything to say about it.
Senator Clarkson?
So can I just clarify, how does a candidate even have access to the ballot box? I mean, isn't it the clerks? I mean, what are the candidates doing in there anyway?
Maybe Will can help us. I believe the BCA was, or some members of it were asked to open sealed ballots or the bag to see whether there was a particular number of votes for a particular party. Again, without knowing more about it, it was an issue in Rutland County, I know that, and it was a House race, I believe. Or no, I'm not sure it was a House race. Do you remember, Will, what this is about? Without using names, maybe you could just help us understand the issue.
Sure, and I do, and I'll really try and keep it quick since I know we're at the end here. Yes, a ballot bag after the election was opened, and
That's different.
the reason it was, but it was, and I wasn't there. I've heard what I've heard via emails and everything else. It was opened because the name. It's interesting how these issues we've discussed today all tie together in this story. The names of write-in candidates had not been recorded. And as you know, there was, why this loops in another aspect of what we've just been talking about, a write-in campaign in the progressive primary for governor. And so they were trying to see what name had been written in on progressive ballots that were cast in this town. They immediately recognized the mistake they'd made and that they overstepped their authority. I want to tell everybody that the BCA chair called me within an hour of realizing the mistake they'd made. They didn't look at the ballots. They sealed the bag back up. But there was a candidate present. The results weren't changed at all. The ORV was not amended. There was a candidate present, and it rightfully caused a lot of concern to voters in that area who heard that a ballot bag had been opened without the right authority. There's statute that gives me 2 reasons why I can authorize a town to open a bag, and then otherwise you have to go to court and get a court order. And the reason they were looking was neither of the ones I can authorize, which are if you seal your memory card in the bag by accident. So again, mistake was realized, but that's where it comes from. But Senator White, I think you're right. There are penalties in place for any kind of nefarious action taken with ballots.
Yeah, I think there's very clearly one about the ballot bags.
And like I said, there's
$200.
also the statute in place already about, you're right, about the ballot bag. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, I think that maybe we'll call it a day, should we?
I think we need to go outside and catch the last piece of sunshine before.
I know. So we are going to next week again on Wednesday so that we have kind of the full day. Start then with, we have the 2 candidate issues that the requirement to vote and the limit the number of candidates for JP by each party that they can nominate. And then we'll move to primaries, the issue there, and the general election. And if we get there, we'll also move to, I'm hoping that we can move to the issue of mail out for the general election. And I'm thinking that all of these issues are really related to elections, and that there's 2 issues here around campaign finance, and we might think about putting them in a different bill because they're related specifically to campaign finance. And the only other issue that has come up that we might want to think about putting in here is the report of the reapportionment board. Their report is supposed to be to us by July of next summer. They aren't even going to get the census information until July. So we need to move that date for them. And there's really no good place to put it. And I don't know that it deserves a standalone bill. But that's the only other thing I've thought of it that should probably be in here. Any other thoughts?
It really sounds like it might be later than July too. Could be August or September.
Yeah, so what I think we need to do is I wrote to Tom Little and asked him what a safe date would be to put into the statute so that they can meet it.
He's the one to ask for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, Madam Chair,
Yeah.
Was there a recent time when the committee discussed putting yourself on multiple places on the ballot?
Doing
We
what?
haven't discussed that yet, but it's a
She
good
means
question.
running for more than one office.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That wasn't ever listed as an issue, I don't think.
But
Not this year, no, but has it come up in recent testimony in past?
Yeah.
years?
We
Yes.
talked
And if-
about it.
And if
2
we want
years
to talk
ago.
about it,
2 years ago, and it was just sort of left alone, was it just?
well, I think the main decision was that it would be unconstitutional to limit anybody's right to run on any,
That's
and
all.
even to run for incompatible offices. It says in the Constitution that you have the right to run for any office you want, but if elected to 2 incompatible offices, you can't serve in both.
And you choose, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that leaves somebody has to be appointed then. So if you
Yeah,
ran
but-
in 7 different offices and one of them and accepted it, you'd have 6 other offices to be appointed.
Okay.
Right. But the Constitution, I think it's clear that the Constitution says you can run for anything you want to,
That's helpful.
but we can bring it up again if there's concerns about it now. We did change it so that you have to have a separate petition for each office you're running for instead of, a friend of mine ran against me. He's in I don't remember which party he's in, one of those minor parties, and he runs all the time. And he was at the co-op once with his petitions, and it said for state senator. And I said, Ben, don't you want me to be elected? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, you're running against me. And he said, oh, okay. And he crossed it off and put US Senate. So, okay. So we'll see you tomorrow, committee.